Duke basketball is set to play someone else on Saturday. How exciting is that? It's a sign that the regular season is almost here and right around the corner. And also Duke football, trying to do something they have never done before. We'll tell you about that on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It is so great to have you here with us on Wednesday, October 16th, 2024, as Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop for everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. We talk a lot about Duke basketball and Duke football, with basketball set to have an exhibition this Saturday. Duke football trying to beat Florida State for the first time ever on Friday night. And who better to talk about both of these things with than our good friend Steve Wiseman of the Raleigh News Observer. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Also, do us a favor, make sure that you check us out on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, share it with your friends. Really do appreciate all your support that you've got with us. So, very excited to bring him on into today's show. The aforementioned Steve Wiseman is back with us, and what a good time of year it is, Steve. Halfway through the month of October, and we've got a lot of on our plate in the world of Duke athletics, my friend.
We sure do, JJ. Good to be with you again. And yeah, this is the time of year when, football and basketball are crossing over. It goes October, November, some of December, I guess, with the bowl game, which looks like Duke's going to another bowl game this year. So going to keep that going. But yeah, it's a fun time with a lot going on and a lot to look forward to for Duke fans.
Without a doubt. So let's talk basketball. We're getting set for this upcoming season, and obviously already saw countdown to craziness. Last week we see ACC tip-off. It feels as though this team's pretty excited to get to play somebody else coming up on Saturday, excuse me. I know it's just an exhibition, but it's a long off season. So many of these players have been here for such a large period of the summer and now fall. And to play someone else has got to be a good feeling for those guys.
Absolutely. You can learn so much more about your team when you line up against another team. And you get tired of, we talk about it in football in August, they get tired of banging on each other. And I think this group is to that point. This Duke basketball team is to that point to where, obviously they're going to be much more talented than the team they play on Saturday, the Division II Lincoln team. But, Duke wants to see how they can, have the substitution pattern start to form and how they play defense as a group, as a whole, subbing people in and out, that kind of thing. So, one thing that's interesting about this exhibition, though, is an old friend, Julius Hodge, from NC State, former ACC Player of the Year. He's in his first year as Lincoln's coach, and this will be his first game coaching them. He was just hired in July, so it's kind of a late, the hiring cycle a little different at Division II. But so that's something. He's coming back to the Triangle. Somebody who was, back in the middle of the couple decades ago, was a really good player for NC State. So that'll be fun.
Now he's getting a chance, as you said, to come back and play against this Duke team, coaching Lincoln, who the Blue Devils will take on. So as Duke gets set for this upcoming season, there's been a lot of chatter about the roster turnover, obviously, with just 2 returners coming back, and Caleb Foster and Tyrese Proctor. Those guys were the players representing Duke at ACC tip-off a week ago. Let's start with those 2 players in particular. Where's their mindset at, Steve, as they look around the locker room and they only see really one another in terms of guys who were out there really contributing to the team last season?
For sure. And, they both started games last year. They were both a key part of the rotation and everything. And before, Caleb got injured in February, he was going to be a major part of what they did in March. And maybe they make the Final Four. They still have him. Who knows? But so for him, it's all about, getting back on the court and showing what he could do and becoming more of a leader, because he's one of the few guys here that have played for Duke. He and Tyrese, the only 2, regular scholarship guys in the rotation that have played for Duke. So there are players who have played more college basketball because of some of the transfers, right? Sion James, Mason Gillis have both played a lot of basketball for other teams. So they're more experienced as college guys, but they don't know what it's like to put a Duke uniform on and go on the road and play for Duke. It's a different feeling. So that's one thing Caleb is trying to do more of. Tyrese as well. but Tyrese is really, really looked upon to be one of the big major players on this year's team. And, as the kind of the point guard or lead guard out there, he's had some ups and downs in his career. He's had some really strong performances. If you just look last year in March, he played really well against Houston to help win that game. 2 steals late in the game, 2 key defensive plays. But then he comes out against NC State and doesn't make a shot from the field and was just devastated with the way he played that day. So he knows he's got some consistency to show. The coaches want to see that, and he can't wait to get on the court and do it.
We're excited to see all of that with Tyrese Proctor making the decision to come back another week. It felt as though all of last week, a lot of people were, applauding Tyrese for the decision to come back for another year, especially in a day and age when you play at a school like Duke and it's so easy to kind of look for other opportunities, maybe bolt and kind of bet on yourself at the next level or be kind of disheartened by how that final game went and look to go somewhere else. But to your point, wow, bigger shoes to fill, so to speak, as a leader for this team. And I think from the scoring perspective as well, I mean, offensively, Duke's going to be looking for Tyrese Proctor to do a lot this season.
They are. They want him to hunt his shots. That's Jon Scheyer's used that sentence. Tyrese needs to hunt his shots and make them. And so, maybe it's, Cooper Flagg has the ability to run an offense. He's at 6'9", he's kind of a point forward a little bit. That's the talent we're talking about here. So maybe Tyrese is off at the wing a little bit, and Cooper drives the lane and kicks it out to Tyrese for an open 3. And that's how Duke gets their open shot, gets their basket. So, yes, Tyrese is going to be in that position, whereas, the last couple of years he was kind of working with and around Jeremy Roach. They were both point guards and off guards, and it was, it worked really well at times. Let's not kid ourselves here. They won an ACC championship together. They went 54-18 in 2 years, right? So that's not awful. But I think that Tyrese probably feels some more freedom now a little bit to like, he's the veteran Duke guy now, 3 years in the program. This is his team. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's named captain again whenever they come out with the captains. They haven't done that yet, but I'm almost be assured he'd be one of them.
Yeah, it'd be a shock for him not to get to retain that captain after having it last season. And expect him to have that same title going into this upcoming basketball season. All right, let's go ahead and we'll take our first quick timeout here. Steve Wiseman from the Raleigh News Observer is joining us on the program. Got to talk more Duke basketball after a quick break here on the program. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the best place to go when you're looking for tickets, and Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that make getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluffs to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks has a curation making it easier to save more. They've got the all-in pricing that if you turn this feature on, it shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. With the seat views, you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and it's the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Back on the show here today, JJ Jackson, joined by my good friend Steve Wiseman from the Raleigh News and Observer. It's crossover season. We got to get to a little bit of football conversation in our final segment of today's show. Basketball, the talking points here, but you've got a coverage of it all, Steve. How can people get involved and support your work?
Sure, I appreciate that, JJ. Newsobserver.com is our website. Or you can follow me on Twitter or X. You see the address there you put on the screen there. Thank you. Steve Wiseman, NC. We'll have links to our coverage there and everything. Covering, not only like this weekend, I'll be at Wallace Wade on Friday night doing the Duke Florida State game. Short night back there at Cameron, 1 o'clock on Saturday. That's the next 2 weekends we'll be doing that because SMU football on the following Saturday, and then the big exhibition with Arizona State and Bobby Hurley coming back on the 27th. So it's that time of year when we're going to have a lot of things going on at the same time. So lots of coverage of both teams. on our website. And in addition to coverage of the other ACC teams, including the two here in the Triangle, Duke and NC State. In addition, Duke, Carolina, NC State, in addition to Duke.
Which we want to go check out supporting at newsobserver.com. So busy days here for the Duke basketball team getting set for the upcoming season. The Cooper Flagg mania has been unbelievable to follow throughout the course of the summer and now going into the fall. He's gotten a chance now, Steve, to meet with you and several other the local reporters there. What have you taken away from some of those conversations, like the person Cooper Flagg is? What do you think Duke fans are going to learn about him this season?
Yeah, he's very driven. He's a serious player, a serious athlete, works hard. There's a lot of comparisons to Zion, right? Because he's such a generational talent like Zion was. But at this time of Zion's career, we didn't know what he was going to be. We didn't know he was going to be the number one overall pick. Whereas right now, Cooper, everything's pointing to him as being the number one overall pick. And Zion had that outsized personality. He had that electric smile and all those things going with him, which is great. Cooper's a little more reserved. They're not exactly, they're different people. That doesn't mean one's right and what's wrong. They're just different. So I think, Cooper's going to do a lot of his show on the court, and he's very competitive, seriously competitive. So kind of like Paulo Banchero, if you remember, he showed up in some really big games. If you remember that game against Gonzaga in Vegas during Paulo's year, when he and Chet Holmgren went head to head, Paulo had a great game to win that game. I see Cooper doing those kind of things. I think when they play Kentucky down in Atlanta, I'm not saying he won't show up for the game against Maine, of course, or Army, but watch for those big spotlight games when he's really going to get to put on a show, and that'll be something to keep an eye on.
Anytime you've got the utmost competitive player, that's also your most talented, and so many things like that. I certainly think players behind him are going to want to follow suit and kind of copy that. What other things have you been hearing from Jon Scheyer as of late when you try to put together maybe an identity or exactly what the outlook for this season is? What has the head coach been saying?
Well, he said he wants them to be, worried about defense first, second, and third. So a lot of times,
How about that?
And that's always been a thing at Duke is defense, but it's not always been the case where they've been as focused as they wanted to be. Even in recent years under Coach K, they had some defensive teams that weren't great, but they were good, but not great, which is what they strive for here. So I know that they think this team has a lot of capability on that end of the court when you've got, Kamal Maliwach, you got Cooper Flagg, they're both shot blockers. You've got Malik Brown, who led the ACC in steals last year at 6'8", 6'9", at that kind of forward position. But they want to also put some more pressure on the perimeter. They want to have Tyrese Proctor out there and Sion James, Caleb Foster, Con Knipple, who's getting a lot of playing time right now, making plays on the perimeter. You've got the rim protectors back there, which is fantastic, but don't let the ball even get there. They feel like they can pressure a little more on the perimeter. So if somehow they make a mistake, they can take a chance and somebody gets past them. Well, they got the rim protectors behind them. But if they can make plays on the perimeter, that leads to more transition baskets and easier points to come by. So that's what I think this identity is going to be. They're going to want to try to suffocate people that way.
Who figures to be those starters for the Duke basketball team, Steve? Do you think it's going to be set in stone right away? It'll be tinkered with through the first few games? What does it kind of look like to you?
I would say I can see it being tinkered with. I mean, obviously, number 2 is going to be in the lineup. Cooper Flagg, it's all going to be built around him.
Right.
But you've got they love what Sion James gives them, that big physical body on the perimeter, and somebody who's comfortable with the ball in his hand. Tyrese Proctor, Caleb Foster, those three. There'll probably be 2 of those 3 starting. They can all move around. Mason Gillis will get in there, maybe some. I think Malik Brown. And come on, that way too. I can see, come on and Cooper together in the starting lineup. That's really a tough defensive group to try to stop. So, but if you're playing a smaller team, maybe you don't need come on to start. Maybe you adjust a little bit and go a little quicker. You have that capability with the transfers they brought in to give them some depth.
You've been studying up on your pronunciation so far, Steve. I mean, you're already
I'm trying.
All right.
That's a tough one.
As we get set for the season and we see this game coming up against Lincoln on Saturday, you already talked about kind of that Julius Hodge connection for Duke. They've also got the benefit of Arizona State, another exhibition, something that we've never really seen before, set to take place next weekend. What is it you think that we can learn about the Duke basketball team in these two meetings before the regular season even gets started?
Yeah, looking at the player rotations first of all. Who is that starting five right now? I think Con Knipple will be in it, but I don't know if I said that strongly enough, but I think he's done enough things that he's shown enough at practice that he'll be in the starting five, which is, I think, we didn't know that at the start of the summer, but right now it looks like he will be. So let's see how much he plays and where he plays. And then, if they do things differently against Lincoln as opposed to Arizona State, where you're playing, another fellow Power 4, Power 5,
Sure.
call it now, team. Maybe if you're going to go bigger with Kaman in there, or if you do something different with the lineup there. Let's see how much, what type of man-to-man defense they play, or if they throw some zone in there every once in a while just to get some work on it, because John likes to throw a curveball every once in a while. That's what he calls it, like throwing a changeup, just to mix things up, just for a couple of possessions. So let's see if they do that this year, or if they just say, no, we're full man-to-man. This is what we're going to do 98 and 99% of the time.
All right, it's going to be fun. Follow the coverage Saturday for the first Duke basketball exhibition game of the season. What we'll do right now is take our final time out here on today's show, and then when we come back, we got to talk about football. That's coming up next here on the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the absolute best when you're looking for the best place to place your bets. NFL fans know about this, with FanDuel being America's #1 sports book. Speaking of NFL and the football action, you got to check out tomorrow's Thursday night football game between the Saints and the Broncos. A lot of good action that when you get in the hunch in the middle of the game, you'll be able to check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. In college football right now, the Duke Blue Devils currently 3-point favorites at home against Florida State on Friday night. Go check out all of that. Get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com, a proud sponsor of the Locked On Blue Devils. All right, we got to transition now. We got to talk about the Duke football team who's getting set to take on Florida State on Friday night, a team that Duke football has never beat before. And Steve, I've heard a lot about that over the last few weeks, of course, going into the season. That's like the chatter, trying to do something that's never been done before. But you look even deeper in it, Steve, and in the 22 meetings, there's only been one game decided by a single possession in the history of these two teams playing one another. It's crazy to kind of put into words or context what traditionally this football series has been.
Yeah, it's really been, the bug in the windshield, right? Yes, the bug in the windshield. And so, and it started, in the 90s when Florida State came into the league and Duke was in a serious, dip at the program's history. And Florida State was elite. And so it showed in the field a lot of 60, 70 points put up by the Seminoles. They really had their best chance to beat them in 2017. That was Jimbo Fisher's last year. Things weren't going well. He knew he was probably going to leave. And, that was a Duke team with Daniel Jones, and Florida State won 17-10 because of some turnovers. So, but just the fact that Duke is favored is pretty shocking. And I know even back in August, nobody could have foreseen this happen. Last year's game was really competitive. I know it ended up being 38-20, but people forget that it was 20-17 Duke in the fourth quarter, and Duke had the ball driving to score when Riley Leonard got hurt, and things went sideways from there, and Florida State scored 3 touchdowns and took care of the win, 38-20. But that was a highly competitive game, and Duke has turned over the roster some, but there are players back from that game that played in that game that know they can play with these guys, and each game Duke plays, Manny Diaz says this is the best team we've played, and I know their record is 1-5. Florida State, but they still have 4- and 5-star athletes. So it's going to be a tough game for Duke to win, but they should win. They're at home. They're favored by a field goal. They are the better team the way they're playing so far this season. They should win this game. So, and that would be bowl eligibility in the first year for Manny. So that'd be pretty good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be amazing to kind of sit there and celebrate. You hope, obviously these players in some ways have nothing to, in many ways, have nothing to do with the history of the series and that sort of thing. You just hope that when the game kicks off and it gets going, they don't feel the fact that, that you mentioned that 17-10 game. That's the closest game in the history of the series, 7 points. Last season's game, an 18-point deficit, was the second closest game. In some ways, it's a win to keep it within 2 scores because that's never been done before. But this team should win the football game. And that's so crazy to say, Steve, when we lay out kind of the series of how dominant Florida State has been against Duke football.
Yeah, it shows you the amount of work that Mike Elko and then now Manny Diaz have done in the last 3 years to really, turn this around. Because even you think back to 2013, 2012, when Duke first started getting good under Cutcliffe, and they won the Coastal in 2013, when they played Florida State in the ACC title game, that was 45-7 game. They held Florida State scoreless in the first quarter, and that's as good as they could do, which was a big accomplishment in this series, but it still turned out to be a blowout. So, yes, the program has continued to progress, and I know they expect a big crowd Friday night, and the students are going to be around, and they're going to want to storm the field again, like they did against Carolina, they did last year against Clemson. I know they're beating a one-win team if you do that, but it's all about doing something you've never done, right? And this is something new these guys want to experience.
Plenty of reason to celebrate for sure. All right, so we talked a little bit about the identity of the Duke basketball team. Defense first, second, and third from head coach Jon Scheyer. We're off a bye week for this Duke football team. You've seen half the games that are going to be played in the regular season so far this year. How do you identify this Duke football team, Steve?
Yeah, it's once again, the defense is carrying the water for everything else. The offense is good enough. It's been good enough. Malik Murphy's been a good quarterback, not great. He's thrown the ball in danger a little bit too much, I think, some interceptions. He's really effective on the deep balls, which that can open the game up. You can change it quickly. And I know they'll try to do that, probably on Friday night. The offense, I think they want to run the ball better. They want to be more effective in that area. Star Thomas has been a huge find in the transfer portal with Jaquez Moore being injured. So the running game has shown some signs, but it's not been that rock they need it to be. But the defensive front, the way they've, they're one of the best in the country at stopping people on third down. Those are just important things to do. And so I think that defense is really leading the way and giving this team its strength.
How surprising is that, Steve? This offseason, you talk about Elko being a defensive guy. He's gone. Manny Diaz is a defensive coach, but so many of the players that Duke had on last year's team aren't there anymore. How surprising is this effort defensively?
Well, it is because, Alex Howard is leading them in tackles right now, the linebacker who transferred from Youngstown State from FCS level.
Right.
A very
big
good
step
FCS
up.
program. Yeah, but that's a big – you don't know what to expect when a guy like that comes into the ACC. He's doing really well. And Ozzie Nichols came from Princeton. And he's helped him out, at linebacker because Nick Morris got hurt. So there are things that we didn't know. We knew the secondary would be pretty good because Chandler Rivers was back and Terry Moore, Josh Pickett. Those guys we knew. Trey Freeman at linebacker. We didn't know about the guys up front because Dwayne Carter was gone and Damian Franklin and Nees Peebles. But Aaron Hall's been really good. Wes Williams on one side, VJ Anthony on the other. They're getting a lot of pressure. They're getting a lot of tackles for loss, and they're stopping people early on first and second down to get those long third downs, which has been the key to Duke getting off the field.
How does Duke win on Friday night? What do they got to do?
Well, they can't turn the ball over. That's like every game, I guess. But when you're playing a team that you should, you're playing better than, you got to play better. You got to not make mistakes. And so don't give them short fields. They're a downtrodden program right now, right? Their season's not going where they want it to. You don't know where the players' heads are. That's the kind of team you want to get up on early and just kind of ride it out. But if you give them hope early with an interception in your own territory or something like that, that could be a mess. So that's one thing. And then, continuing to, get those, stops for loss, sacks, pressuring the quarterback, putting them in bad situations on third down. That's going to be really important.
All right, Steve Wiseman from the Raleigh News Observer. Plenty of great coverage that you could check out on Friday with football, and then Saturday, the Duke basketball exhibition, and another season getting to do a podcast with Sheldon Williams. How cool is that? Believe in Duke. Tell us about the show, Steve.
Yeah, it'd come out once a week. We'll be doing another episode tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So Sheldon and I are going to talk about. I was at a practice the other day, and it's always good to see practice and then run it past Sheldon, who's been in several practices in Cameron Stadium, right? So Sheldon brings a great perspective, and that I know Duke fans appreciate. So yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that podcast. We'd love to do it.
Steve, thanks for the time today. We'll do this again soon, okay?
Okay, JJ, thank you.
All right, that's Steve Wiseman joining us here on today's show, and that concludes another episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Thank you all for your support. As always, getting closer to more Duke football and basketball action coming up this weekend. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.